Hi and welcome to the show, the Family Business Show with John Bruns, the Family Business Guy. Today we have a very special show. Today we're talking about working inside, working on and working from the outside of a family business. And my special guest is Steve Sampson. Steve is here. He has worked with the Lionel Sampson Sadleir Group, a family business that has been operating for over 180 years. I'm really looking forward to an exciting show. I just want to thank our sponsors for today, and today's sponsor is TEC, the Executive Connection. I've been associated with TEC for many years. I've been both a member and a facilitator, a TEC chair. TEC is all about better decisions and better leaders. I think from my experience, the leadership and the learnings and the experience of the leaders of these groups have made a very big difference, a huge difference in my business life. And I think that if you contact them on www.tec.com.au, you can connect with TEC, the organisation, and I think it would be in your interests. So thank you, TEC. Hi and welcome. Today we have Steve Sampson from the Lionel Sampson Sadleir Group. He's my special guest, and we're talking about working in, on and from the outside of your family business. Welcome, Steve.
Hi John, how are you going?
I'm going well. Just to kick us off and to give the viewers a bit of an idea about the Lionel Sampson Sadleir Group, I know that it's over 180 years old. How did it start?
Well, I suppose it all goes back to my great-great-great-grandfather Lionel, who was bequeathed a chair on the London Stock Exchange, and he could have actually lived a very comfortable life in London, but in his late 20s, he had made a lot of money by having that seat on the London Stock Exchange. He was ready for adventure, and he was looking at that stage and going to Canada and setting up a business over in Canada somewhere. But as a chance meeting with James Sterling, where he was painted a picture of what was about to unfold over in the other side of the world, and in Fremantle and Perth. And it was really interesting at that time in London because there was a thing called Swan River fever. So there was a lot of hype around what was happening on the other side of the world, and it was enough to get the interest of Lionel and his brother, and they came out with the first boats that came out with the colony. So it's got to be known that that Fremantle was not a penal colony; it was a free settlement, and Lionel came with his brother, and I'm not quite sure exactly what they thought when they first hit the barren soils of the Western Australian coast, but chose to stay and build a business. And so he actually had a general merchant's business, which was instrumental in help setting up the colony. And as I say, he stayed here for the duration of his life, and subsequently the generations that came behind. James Sterling was only here for a short period and took off back to London. So yeah, like the intention from Lionel originally was to create a family business. It was a partnership with his brother for a period, and he had another brother living back in London, and they were trading. And then later his brother moved on to South Australia, and then Lionel had his business by himself, and then with his family, with his sons. Now, how it worked with the free settlement is that depending on how much money was brought to the settlement, they were granted so much land. And Lionel brought significant funds, and so he was lucky enough to have a significant portion of land. I used to joke with my uncle that if we'd kept the farm, we would have been much better off, because the farm covered most of the western suburbs from Osmond Park through Cottesloe. And there is a little bar there called Samson's Paddock. Nothing to do with the family, but
I think
yes,
we've eaten there once.
we have gone a couple of times. Yeah.
Mm.
And that was really part of where Lionel's original landholding was. But he was a trader. He built up his business, and he was instrumental in setting up the colony. He was the first Postmaster General. I think he was the first president of the Chamber of Commerce. He was in the Legislative Assembly. So he was really part of the original society that was being formed here. So it's fantastic.
So today, the Lionel Samson Sadlier Group is quite a diverse business. It's no longer trading or it is a general trading business still, to some degree, or what?
Yeah.
What?
We still have trading arms, So liquor has always been a major part of our business. Originally, I think the story goes that Lionel, we had the first liquor license and still hold the first liquor license in the state. And Lionel used to be the Postmaster General, so when people used to come and pick up their mail, they'd have a shot. So he was very creative in the way that he ran his business. But I think we were an importer of a lot of European wines and spirits for a long, long time. It was only really been in the last 20 odd years that we really stepped out of being an agent and actually bought into a winery. And so we've stayed in the industry, but as a producer as opposed to an agent. And probably the largest part of our organisation at the moment is our transport arm, and that really came about during post-war years, where my father and his brothers all came back from the war, and they were looking at about how the boys would be involved in the business. And we had a very strong association between R.C. Sadlier, which was another family business that was set up in 1895, and they were doing a lot of the customs work for Samson's, and my father, coming back from the war, got involved. It was because we had such a close tie with R.C. Sadlier's. There was an opportunity to buy the business, which we did, and then my father actually managed it. So at that stage, it was purely a customs agency. He built it up really to be a transport network around the country. So it was like during the 60s where we had that boom time, there was an opportunity to grow that business into a freight moving company. But we always retained the customs side. So now it's a one-stop shop. We have customs, which is the global customs agency. We have local transport. We've got interstate, international. And then what has evolved since then is that we diversified into a plastics division, which is going quite well. And so I think diversification is always good to protect your interests. Yeah.
So we've started off with Lionel Samson and his brother, and we're now
189 years
on. So there's multi-generations there. We have, I'm sure there would be family members working still in the business, but how do there isn't one leader, I'm assuming, or I actually know that there is now a board in the business.
Yeah, like we went through a process a few years back to bring the whole group together. Because of my father's involvement in the transport division, he had a small portion separate to the family, which our family sold back to the group so we could amalgamate it, which enabled us to hopefully create a governance that was appropriate to the size of the business and to cover all businesses. And that sort of happened about five years ago. We've only really had a very small footprint in the businesses. When I was working there, I worked there for 29 years. There was only 3 of us from the family that were working in the business. Currently, my son and there's also another my cousin's son is working in the business, so there's two family members who are working actually in the operations. And then we have three family members on the operating board with two non-execs, and then we have all families sitting at the holding company. So across the top we have family representatives, but then we've got governance. The corporate governance happens the next tier down with that blend of family and non-execs.
Okay, so I understand then that there are family shareholders. Are there outside shareholders? Is it a publicly listed company?
No, it's and that's really that's the mantle that we hold is that we're the oldest family business on mainland Australia that is 100% owned by the original family lineage. So it hasn't been watered down, it hasn't been sold off, it's still held by the original family.
So a lot of family members, but only 2 or 3 family members actually working in the business.
Yeah, that's how it's been for a long time. I think, I think there was especially my father, like my background is engineering.
You worked outside before you came into the business?
Yeah, look, I went through and did university, got my engineering degree, worked here with the Public Works Department, and then went travelling and worked in London. Prior to going overseas, my father had a conversation with me and said, "I'd love you to join the business." And I said, "Thanks, Dad, but I'm going to do other things." Sadly, while I was overseas, he suffered a stroke, and then sadly passed away. So when I came back from overseas, I involved myself at the board level because I thought I wanted to make sure that what my father had created and worked all his life was going to be protected. So I thought the best way to do it was to be on the board, and I was doing other things, totally divorced of engineering. So, but what I found was I wanted to be a better informed board member, and to do that I actually had to get a bit of a sense of the industry and our particular company, and I got involved in the business at that stage without the intention of being there for the long term, but really to be a better board member. It was during the 80s when things were incredibly tough and high interest rates, and my only involvement that I could do was to actually push a barrow and empty wagons, and so I was an engineer who was working with the guys on the floor.
This is going to be a great opportunity for us to start looking at challenges in our next part. But now we're going to take a break, and we will come back shortly with Steve Sampson. Okay, welcome back. I'm interviewing Steve Sampson of the Lionel Sampson Sattler Group. So Steve, now that we're back from the break, we were just getting into some of the places, the areas of challenge that have happened over the years. Can you give us a little bit of an enlightenment of some of the challenges that you might have faced or the business has faced?
Look, it was challenging times when I first joined the business, because that was during the 80s. There was high interest rates.
Communication about you said you had to take your own counsel. Without communication, really having the opportunity to talk with the people on the shop floor about your responsibilities, and without being able to talk to the other board members to give them a perspective, I can understand that would have been very challenging for you personally.
Look, I found it really quite stressful over my time there, and I was trying to actually make because it was my father's business, and I was there really to ensure that the work that he had done. So I was trying to find a place that I could best add value to the organisation, and I suppose for a period there I was lost, with regards to how to best manifest that advantage. And I think it really came through is that when I was invited to come along to a function, which was the Family Business Australia functions, that I got to realise and observe other family businesses, and then make sense of my own situation, and then start to see the dynamics that were playing there, where I could actually. And so I learned so much from my involvement with Family Business Australia.
Well, you even got to be national chairman of Family Business Australia.
Well, yeah, because what is interesting, really, if I look back at my introduction, it was a close friend. I was going through because I was doing the quality assurance back at Sadley's at that stage, and I was working with a close friend, and he invited me to a breakfast, and the breakfast was really a discussion about the death of a family business. It was Harvey Beef, E.G. Green, and Alan Green was talking about how his business, his family business, came to finally be wound up. And I was sitting there during the course of this breakfast and realised that there was nowhere else in town where there was this openness and frankness of people just speaking about really what's happening in their own businesses. It was always, people are very protective about their businesses. So I thought that this forum is something that I needed to get involved with. I got involved as a member. Then I found myself on the state committee, and then I became the local chairman, and then I became national chairman. But it wasn't my initial intention, but it was how I could learn and how I could add value to my own business, but also to the organisation.
There's a passion, isn't there, when we deal with family members? We actually understand their place in their own family business. And we have an association with that. We have a feeling about that. I'm suggesting that, but is that the way you would see it?
Yeah, like I was, because at that stage I was looking at what is good governance, family governance, business governance, how to bring that back into our family. So what I could learn, my relationships that I gained through Family Business Australia, try and bring that back to my family to see how I could make us more professional and try and overcome some of the issues that we were confronting with. But yeah.
These issues that you're being confronted with, are these the other challenges that you had, not just being on the shop floor and perceived? There's obviously business challenges.
Oh, there was business challenges because, it was during the 80s, it was an incredibly tight situation. But we had a fantastic, I think what was really amazing in our organisation is that we had a very strong family business culture. So the people that have been in the business themselves, not family members, but been in the business and been there for 20, 30, 40 years. And they really had a sense of loyalty that really got us through those hard times. And so these people were so engaged with the family business, they just wanted to give everything to make sure that, it survived. With the family, it was an interesting time because although we're 180 years, the ownership of the business has been fairly tightly held. And so I'm really dealing with a cousin consortium, which is quite unique at 180 years. We should be beyond that stage. But with how the ownership unfolded, we're still dealing with the cousin consortium stage, which is the most challenging of all stages when it comes to an evolution of a family business. And I spoke at the last family business conference about my understanding about how that is a challenge. And I think it's because when you got the founder family, you can talk about the business over the kitchen table, and you got the same set of values and the same understanding about what the founder was wanting and what the next generation can hear. And you got one story. And then as you split into the next and subsequent generations, you get tribes, and you get different value systems with in-laws and marriages. And it's very hard to get that consistency of understanding. And I think, and if there's any family issues, and we had some family issues that went back 70 years, and they get built in and embedded in the family dynamic, and the family story. And sometimes, unless that's dealt with, it's something that you carry with you forward. And I think that's been one of the issues for our family. And I don't think it has been resolved. But and I think it has been an issue that has played out and has sort of hasn't allowed us to come together as a family as we could have or should have to support the business. We're now relying on external expertise to create corporate governance, but I think, and the issue associated with that at the moment is that we have 5 people sitting at that board, and there's a lack of understanding of the industry or the business and or family business that has been to the detriment of the organisation. But hopefully they can work their way through it. But those limitations have played out badly.
Governance is obviously a very difficult issue and a big challenge. So there's been quite a bit of change, is what I'm hearing. And I want to talk about next what we've done, where you might be going, and what might have been done. So we might take a break now, and we'll come back and talk about how we're resolving some of these things, some of the opportunities. Welcome back to the show with Steve Sampson from the Lionel Sampson Saddlers Group. Steve, thanks very much so far. This has been really riveting stuff from my side. I'm just interested, you've stepped away from the business now. What are some of the things that you're doing?
Look, I suppose I have to sort of paint a picture with regards to my involvement with FBA. So over the 10 years I was there, I was at the national board for nearly 6 or 7 years, and I got involved with education. So I chaired the education subcommittee that helped develop a lot of the education that's happening now within the organisation. And so, yeah, look, I involved myself as much as I possibly could in that organisation to assist it, and then to the point of actually being national chair for 3 years. And that's really helped me gain a better understanding, because I've worked 29 years in our family business. I've worked 10 years with FBA. I can now share my understanding of hopefully what's best practice and help other families. And it's been really nice. There's been I've been approached through FBA, through members, for me to be on boards, advisory boards. And that was just a fantastic opportunity. And I worked totally outside my industry, which was a funeral company. But the chairman was a close friend of mine, and he came from the industry, and he invited me on as another non-exec, and I brought a lot of family business understanding, a lot of process understanding, because I did engineering and quality assurance. But predominantly that advisory board was family. And so the journey that we went through there was trying to actually look at that generational change from first generation to second generation. And we explored over 12 months to see where the next generation, how they want to participate in this organisation. Were they willing to actually buy into it? Did they want to actually run it? And so that was a really interesting journey. And so the chairman was able to professionalise the business because of his industry understanding. And we had some great conversations to get the family to a point where they were all happy with regards to the outcome.
These conversations that you were having with the family, did you have individual conversations with each family member and then conversations as the group?
No, it was at an advisory board level. I think there were one-on-one conversations happening through the chairperson. But yeah, no, it was really just enabling the family to share openly and honestly, and encourage them to see where they wanted to be. And it was fantastic. Where the final outcome was really good for the business. It was good for the family, and it was good for the founder. So, and it took a while, but these things.
You say the final outcome. My mind is thinking, yeah, but it's still a journey. and
Oh,
things will
absolutely.
still play out over time. So it's still family involvement within the business.
Yeah, yeah. There's still family involvement, but they can be involved as they like. The founder was able to take some money from the business, so he's now able to enjoy his retirement. Although he's now reinvigorated to make sure that the business continues and succeeds. But it's without the pressure of being the owner. So it's been, and it was interesting really because the board was able to be a check for the owner-founder. He had a tendency to go racing off all over town. And so it was nice that he could, the board actually created that opportunity to put him and ask him. He had to justify all his ideas to make sure they stood up before he went off and did them, whereas before he would just do it himself because it was his business. And then that's the role of the board is to help think through these strategies to make sure that they hold water. Yeah.
When he created the board, it was just family, and then there were non-execs that came in from outside.
No, I think it was the chairperson that came in, and then to form it, and then I came in to join as a non-exec with the chairperson. So it was predominantly family with some great assistance from myself and the chairperson. But so one of the challenges was to help the family, work out what they would really want to do, and so to help their thinking and clarification. And to help the owner of the business make sure that he did the right thing by the family and by the organisation, with regards to long-term strategy. Yeah.
Long-term strategy is always a difficult one. I'm sure he would have had, how do I exit? How do I actually get that break? How do I do that without disadvantaging the family?
Yeah, because absolutely. One of the first people to approach the family was some venture capitalists, and I was very strong in saying that, and I think it was agreed fairly easily and quickly that process was that these people really didn't have any engagement with the business. It was about how do we make money out of this opportunity. And that can be such a destructive thing for the family and for the business, especially if the with the founder forming something, it becomes their child, and not just to give the child to somebody else to exploit. So it was good that we went through that process, and then through the chairperson found another opportunity where it was on their terms as opposed to external terms. Yeah.
Okay. You've worked with other family businesses as well. What other challenges have you come across that you've had to work with?
Yeah, look, I'm sort of acting as an unofficial mentor for another family, and I'm actually meeting this afternoon with them. They're huge potential business, but a fairly fractured family situation. So I'm trying to get them to think about what's good for the business, what's good for the family, and how we can get that clarification and awareness, and really, stating it quite openly that the family are the weak underbelly of the business, and if the family falls apart, the impact it can have on the business can be huge, and the fact that if there's any disagreements and things happening over in the family, it can slow down, it can stop the growth of the business, because something over here is dictating the outcome over in the business. So hopefully we can get through that, but I'm trying to be an external person who can facilitate this, because it can't be done from within. The family is so closely aligned, and as I'm sure you appreciate being an advisor, John, is the role of an external person can be a very powerful place where you can just help them see it for what it is. Yeah.
It's always challenging because we, as advisors, we carry bias, unintentional, but we have to be able to recognise it for what it is when we're talking with families.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about FBA. We've talked a little bit about a couple of family businesses where you're working through or have worked through some challenges. The challenge of governance is something that you mentioned earlier. Families in business, I've noticed, are are not strong in the governance side of things, in general terms. In your particular situation where you've been invited in, what would be 2 or 3 ideas that you might be able to suggest families address when they're thinking about governance?
Interesting question. I think first and foremost, and it's something that I push all the time, is appropriate governance. And so when we were working with a funeral company, with predominantly family members, 2 non-execs, it was an advisory board really, but it seemed to be appropriate governance for their situation. And we had the office manager who was there as well to be part of that. So it was transparency, open discussions, and informal, and there was an informality that enabled those sort of honest discussions to occur. As the organisation grows, it becomes very, very hard with regards to just how formalised you should have that governance process. But I think it's the most important thing is the people who sit at that board and what they bring. And you could say, you can have the smartest guy in a particular industry or area, doesn't necessarily mean they're actually going to add to your business. And so you've got to just make sure you've got the right people in the room and the right dynamics. I think some people can control the boardroom or dictate what happens in the boardroom and to kill open and honest discussion and that because they think that they're right or whatever. And that is a really destructive board situation. When you can't have open, honest discussions with people that know what they're talking about.
You're also going to find how is that communication between that board and the wider family. That's generally where I find some challenges.
Well, in an ideal way, you want to have family members, but on that board. But because in the end, it's a family business, and you want the family to hopefully control the destiny of the organisation and not be taken away, by external parties. And so the way I see it is you need a long-term plan to make sure that you've got family members who have come through the business, they know the business, and you train them up to be, in governance and in as much education as possible. And so the family is able to control the family business, but to bring in expertise when you need it. You don't join a board and you're there forever. You join a board because you offer something in its growth, in its journey. But you really have to, hopefully, in an ideal situation, the family controls that process because they've got the skill and expertise and experience best.
I really love that statement, appropriate governance. Fit for kind, fit for the place, fit for the people. Thanks very much, Steve. On that note, we're going to break and we'll come back shortly. Please stay with us. Welcome back, Steve, to the show. Just after the break, or through the break, we were having a conversation about governance and corporatisation and professionalisation. Steve, your views on corporatisation, professionalisation?
Yeah.
I think that would be really great for the listeners.
Okay, as I said before, it's about appropriate governance, and I suppose family businesses have to be mindful about how they go about and set up a governance structure. And as you've stated, there's a lot of family businesses that really don't have sufficient governance for the size that they are. But what I found is you've got to be mindful about hopefully not going down to become a corporatisation, definitely professionalising, but with a heart and with a soul. So what was really interesting in the early stages of our new board, which was heading very quickly down a corporatisation process, I was involved with a strategy session, and it was really interesting because it was somewhat manipulated, and the outcome was from that is the most important person in the room at any one time is a shareholder. And they were saying that you should be waking up every morning and saying, I'm going to go work as hard as I can to make as much money for the shareholder. And that really didn't get the people in the room all that excited, really. The way I see it is that the shareholder and the advantages gained by the shareholder is a byproduct of a good organisation. So if you can manage that organisation, have tight governance, appropriate governance, good people, and you become profitable, then the shareholders will get the value. But you shouldn't say, and what I've been doing of recent times is I came across at one of our family business Australia meetings, I came across somebody who was talking about conscious capitalism. And when I was told about what conscious capitalism is, it seemed to make so much sense to me with my journey through our business and looking at the tenets. And if we just briefly just touch on those, and hopefully it'll make some sense, where the first tenet in the philosophy of conscious capitalism, and before I do it really came out, conscious capitalism came out of a book that was written by John Mackey, and it was really as a result of a business called Whole Foods in America, which was just recently sold to Amazon for $14 billion. Was really about how he built his business using the philosophy and the idea of conscious capitalism. So the first thing is that you have to make money, otherwise next month you can't pay your employees. So making money is an essential lifeblood for the organisation, but it's not the end. It's creating a purpose that people can aspire to. It's a purpose that adds to society, and that's really underpins the organisation and the reasons why they are. And then the next thing is that when you create your business model, you make sure that there's a win-win-win. And my style of doing business has always been that I can build a partnership with somebody else and make sure that that partnership, that arrangement grows, because we're both winning out of this. It's not about how do I get something over you, how do I maximise or exploit that relationship. And if we look at the story of Whole Foods, it really shows up in the early stages where they only had 2 stores in Texas, and one week they got wiped out by flood. He thought that was the end of his business, and then what happened is the following week his employees came in and said, we believe in this organisation, what you stand for, that we will work and clean up here and you pay us when you can. The customers came in shortly thereafter and said, we want to help because we believe in what you stand for, and we want to continue shopping at your centres. And the suppliers came in and said, once you're all cleaned up, we'll supply, you pay us when you can. Because he had created this business model where everybody won out of that business model, everybody wanted that business to succeed. And that's why he, in 20 years, he grew it into a $14 billion business based on that understanding.
I've been to a workshop that Conscious Capitalism ran not too long ago here, and I was hearing one of the presenters speaking of his experience where over a number of years he was writing reports for a board that he found had never been read, were never being addressed, and he was disenfranchised by that business and subsequently left the company. That happens within families. We need to have the communication line. We need to understand what we're trying to achieve with the business, and we want to be able to share the benefits and be able to really enjoy it. And if it gets too large, how do we empower those family members and those members of the businesses to enjoy it?
Like enjoyment. It is interesting. The wealth that comes from the business is an enabler. and it enables that family to prosper and do things. I remember at one of our conferences we had the owner of a very famous winery, and he said, in the bottom right-hand drawer of my desk, all the papers, all ready to go. All I got to do is sign it to sell the business. The minute, if the business gets in the way of the family, it no longer serves its purpose. So yeah, it's there for one. It's a vehicle for the family to hopefully manifest their dreams and their opportunities, and to educate them, make them better people, and create something of some note. This family group that I'm working with this afternoon, that whole purpose is to enhance humanity. And they're actually doing work which is world's best practice here in Perth, which is going to really impact the globe. And so those sort of things, when they're shared within the organisation, with the family and with the organisation, magic can happen. And that's really, and because to start a business out of nothing, it takes a lot of courage, and so that's what If that story can be told and engaged with your employees and with your family, it's hopefully success will follow. Yeah.
The win-win-win. I love that. I've aspired to that myself, and I like to make sure that my clients are always winning. And their families are always winning. And I find that communication is always the key.
Mm.
They have to be able to talk together.
Well, that'll be the skill of a facilitator. I think people have their own perceptions, and they think they're doing it for the right reasons. But it takes a skilled facilitator to help people sort of realise the commonality of maybe some of those things. And sometimes, even in politics, it was an interesting comment. It was stated to me just quite recently. There's very little between the two parties, when it comes to the sort of energy, but because of the dynamics that are played out in that place, there's no way they're going to come together, and it's just a battleground. When really they've got more in common than they have, and the same can be in a family.
Very much so. And every individual in the family, they understand the family, but they don't necessarily understand themselves.
Well,
and the influences that are happening to them as they grow up.
And that's one of the things that through Family Business Australia, through being part of forum and things like that, is they can learn about themselves through interaction with others. I think that's where you find out about yourself, is through that interaction, not through necessarily sitting at home and looking at the ceiling.
Steve, we're almost out of time. One thing that you can offer to the listeners or the viewers that's really made a difference to you in your life to get you to here? I think it's my involvement with Family Business Australia has been one of the best things that I did, because I was beavering away within my family business, trying to actually do the best I possibly could without having an awareness, without having a depth of support, without having relationships that really added something to my understanding of what I was confronted with, and then all of a sudden you can make sense of what you're having to deal with because of all this that you can learn along the way. So if you're in a family business and you're living in Australia, I'd recommend you join FBA. But it's one of the most important things that happened in my life. Thanks very much, Steve. Thank you very much for your time today. And that is a great sharing of life experience for our viewers. So thanks again, and I look forward to you joining the Family Business Show in the future. I just want to thank our sponsors for today, and today's sponsor is Tech, the Executive Connection. I've been associated with Tech for many years. I've been both a member
and a facilitator, a tech chair. Tech is all about better decisions and better leaders. I think from my experience, the leadership and the learnings and the experience of the leaders of these groups have made a very big difference, a huge difference in my business life. And I think that if you contact them on www.tech.com.au, you can connect with Tech, the organisation, and I think it would be in your interests. So thank you, Tech.